The alarm bells rang through the space station. Commander Jake Martinez was drinking his morning coffee when the sound made him jump. He put down his cup and ran to the control room. His crew was already there, looking at the big screen that showed space around them. "What's going on?" Jake asked his second-in-command, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez. "We got a message from Earth," Amy said. Her face looked worried. "It's marked as top secret. The Admiral wants to talk to you right now." Jake walked to his private office and turned on the communication system. The screen flickered and then showed Admiral Patricia Kane sitting at her desk on Earth. She looked tired and stressed. "Jake," the Admiral said without any greeting, "we have a big problem. The aliens want to talk." "Which aliens?" Jake asked. There were many different alien species that humans had met in the past 50 years. Some were friendly, some were not, and some just ignored humans completely. "All of them," Admiral Kane said. "The Galactic Council has sent us a message. They want Earth to send one person to answer questions about what we've been doing in space." Jake felt his stomach drop. The Galactic Council was made up of 12 different alien species. They had been running things in this part of the galaxy for hundreds of years before humans ever left Earth. Humans were still new to space travel compared to them. "What kind of questions?" Jake asked. Admiral Kane touched some buttons on her desk and sent him a file. "Read this." But the short version is that they think we're being too aggressive. They say we built colonies in places we shouldn't have. They say we attacked some alien ships when we should have just run away. Jake opened the file and started reading. The aliens called Zelkari were very angry with humans. They said that humans had built 3 colonies in space that belonged to them. When Zelkari ships went to check on these colonies, human ships had fought them and won. "The Zelkari are telling everyone that humans are dangerous," Admiral Kane continued. "They want the Council to punish us. Maybe stop us from trading with other species. Maybe even send their military to make us leave those star systems." Jake kept reading the file. The Zelkari were insect-like aliens with hard shells and sharp claws. They were known for being good fighters and not very friendly to other species. But they had been part of the Galactic Council for a long time, so other aliens listened to them. "Why do they want just one person?" Jake asked. "It's how they do things," Admiral Kane said. "When there's a problem between species, they have a big meeting. Each side sends one person to speak for their whole species. That one person has to answer all the questions and defend their people." Jake looked at the screen, showing all the different alien species in the Council. There were the crystal-like Etherians who could live for thousands of years. There were the Titans, who were as big as elephants and twice as smart. There were the Delphins, who lived in water and could talk to each other with sound waves. Each species was different and strange in their own way. "Who are you going to send?" Jake asked. Admiral Kane looked right at him through the screen. "You." Jake felt like someone had hit him in the stomach. "Me? I'm not a diplomat. I'm just a soldier. I don't know how to talk to alien politicians." "That's exactly why we're sending you," Admiral Kane said. "We could send Ambassador Williams or one of the other diplomats, but they would just talk in circles and make pretty speeches. The aliens have heard all that before from other species." She leaned forward in her chair. "Jake, you've been out here in space for 10 years. You've met more alien species than almost any other human. You know how to talk to them without being fake. And most importantly, you know what really happened in those fights with the Zelkari." Jake thought about the fights she was talking about. 3 months ago, human cargo ships were carrying supplies to the new colonies. Zelkari ships had appeared and tried to board the cargo ships. When the human captains refused, the Zelkari had started shooting. Jake's patrol ships had been nearby and came to help. They had fought the Zelkari and made them run away. No one had died, but several ships were damaged. The Zelkari ships attacked first, Jake said. Our people were just defending themselves. I know that, and you know that, Admiral Kane said. But the Zelkari are telling a different story. They say those star systems belong to them, and we were stealing from them. They say we should have just left when they told us to. Jake felt angry. Humans had explored those star systems for months before building the colonies. They had found no signs of any alien species living there. The planets were empty except for plants and animals. According to space law, that meant humans could claim them. We followed all the rules, Jake said. We explored those systems. We found no one living there. We sent messages to all nearby species, saying we were going to build colonies. No one complained until after we were already there. The Zelkari say they were using those systems as hunting grounds, Admiral Kane said. They say they've been going there for hundreds of years to hunt the animals on those planets. Hunting grounds aren't the same as colonies, Jake said. You can't claim a whole star system just because you visit it sometimes. Admiral Kane nodded. That's what we think too. But the Galactic Council has to hear both sides of the story, and they have to decide who's right. Jake looked at the file again. The meeting would be held on Nexus Prime, the big space station where the Galactic Council met. It was neutral ground where all species could come together safely. The station had different sections for different types of aliens, each with the right air and temperature and gravity for their species. When do I have to be there? Jake asked. 2 weeks, Admiral Kane said. The Council wants to settle this quickly before it becomes a bigger problem. Other alien species are watching to see what happens. If the Council decides against us, it could make things very difficult for all humans in space. Jake understood what she meant. Humans were still new to the galaxy. They needed to trade with other species to get materials and technology that Earth didn't have. If the Council decided that humans were dangerous troublemakers, they might convince other species to stop trading with humans completely. What if I mess this up? Jake asked. Admiral Kane's face softened a little. Jake, I've known you for 15 years. I know you'll do your best. And I know you'll tell the truth. That's all we can ask for. She sent him another file. This has information about all the alien species on the Council. Study it on your way to Nexus Prime. Learn how they think and how they make decisions. But remember, you're not going there to make friends. You're going there to make them understand that humans aren't the bad guys in this situation. Jake nodded. He felt scared and excited at the same time. This was bigger than any mission he had ever been on. The future of all humans in space might depend on what he said to the Alien Council. There's a fast ship leaving for Nexus Prime tomorrow, Admiral Kane said. Pack light. And Jake, good luck. All of humanity is counting on you. The screen went dark. Jake sat in his chair for a long time, thinking about what he had to do. In 2 weeks, he would stand in front of the most powerful aliens in the galaxy and speak for his entire species. It was the biggest responsibility anyone had ever given him. He looked out the window of his office at the stars. Somewhere out there, aliens were deciding whether humans deserved to have a place among those stars. Soon, Jake would have to convince them that they did. The journey to Nexus Prime took 12 days through hyperspace. Jake spent most of his time studying the files Admiral Kane had sent him. Each alien species in the Galactic Council was different in ways that sometimes made his head hurt, just thinking about them. The Vorthic were made of gas instead of solid matter like humans. They lived inside special suits that kept their gas bodies together. They were very smart and had been exploring space for over 1,000 years. They usually stayed neutral in arguments between other species. The Etherians looked like walking crystals that could change colors. They lived much longer than humans and thought very slowly about everything. What seemed like a quick decision to a human might take an Etherian months to make. They valued patience and careful thinking above all else. The Titans were huge, almost as big as small buildings. They moved slowly, but were incredibly strong and smart. Their voices were so deep that humans needed special equipment to understand them properly. They had built some of the biggest structures in the galaxy. Jake read about all 12 species until his eyes hurt. Each one had different customs, different ways of thinking, and different things that made them angry or happy. Some species thought it was rude to look directly at them. Others thought it was rude not to look at them. Some liked loud voices. Others preferred whispers. The worst part was learning about the Zelkari. They were like giant insects with hard shells covering their bodies. They had sharp claws and could move very fast. Their culture was based on being strong and taking what they wanted from weaker species. They respected only power and saw kindness as weakness. This is going to be harder than I thought, Jake said to himself as he closed the files. On the 12th day, the ship's pilot called him to the bridge. Commander, we're approaching Nexus Prime. You need to see this. Jake walked to in front of the ship and looked out the big window. What he saw made him stop breathing for a moment. Nexus Prime was the most beautiful and strange thing he had ever seen. The space station looked like a giant flower made of metal and crystal, floating in the darkness of space. Each petal of the flower was a different color and shape, designed for a different alien species. It's bigger than I expected, Jake said. The station is home to over 10 million beings from dozens of different species, the pilot said. It's like a city in space, but a city where every neighborhood is designed for completely different kinds of people. As their ship got closer, Jake could see other ships arriving and leaving. Some were sleek and fast like human ships. Others were huge and slow like floating mountains. One ship looked like it was made entirely of ice, while another seemed to be on fire but not burning up. Human ship, this is Nexus Prime Control, a voice said over the radio. The voice was translated by computer, but Jake could tell it wasn't. Human, please follow the blue lights to Docking Bay 7. A greeting party will meet you there. Jake gathered his few belongings and prepared to leave the ship. He had brought only basic clothes and his military dress uniform for the council meeting. Everything else he might need would have to be found on the station. The docking bay was huge, big enough to hold 20 ships the size of the one Jake had arrived on. But what surprised him most were the two aliens waiting for him. He had studied their pictures, but seeing them in person was completely different. The first alien was a Vorthic named Ambassador Lyra Vex. Her gas body swirled inside a clear suit that looked like a human-shaped container. The gas was purple and blue and moved like smoke in the wind. Her voice came from speakers built into the suit. Commander Martinez, she said, and her voice sounded like music. Welcome to Nexus Prime. I am Ambassador Vex. I will help you understand how things work here. The second alien was an Etherian named Counselor Zeph Krallen. He looked like a person made of blue crystal that sparkled when he moved. Light seemed to come from inside his body, making pretty patterns that changed as he talked. The Council is very interested in meeting you, Krallen said. His voice sounded like wind chimes. It has been many years since a new species has come before us with such serious charges against them. Jake wasn't sure if that was good or bad. Thank you for welcoming me. I hope we can solve this problem peacefully. Ambassador Vex's gas body swirled faster. Jake remembered from his studies that this meant she was thinking hard about something. Commander, I must be honest with you. Many council members are worried about your species. Humans have a reputation for being ... aggressive. What kind of reputation? Jake asked. Krallen's crystal body flashed with different colors. In the 50 years since humans left their home planet, you have been involved in more conflicts than any other species. You fight the Zalkari, you argue with the Kithra, you even had problems with the peaceful Delphins over fishing rights. Jake felt frustrated. We didn't start any of those fights. We were just defending ourselves. That may be true, Dex said, but the result is the same. Other species see humans as troublemakers. They think you solve problems by fighting instead of talking. As they walked through the station, Jake saw how different all the aliens were. The hallways were built to accommodate everyone, with different paths for different species. He saw the Delphins swimming through tubes filled with water that ran alongside the regular walkways. The Kithra, who looked like giant spiders, crawled along the walls and ceiling using special paths built just for them. How do you all live together? Jake asked. Everyone is so different. It takes a lot of work, Kralin said. We have spent hundreds of years learning how to share space and resources. Every species has had to give up some things to make it work for everyone. They passed through a large open area where aliens from different species were talking together. Jake saw a Titan, as big as a truck, having a conversation with tiny flying aliens that looked like butterflies. Nearby, some crystal Etherians were showing holographic images to a group of gas-bodied Vorthic. The key is respect, Dex explained. Each species has something valuable to offer. The Titans are great builders. The Etherians are master scientists. The Delphins are excellent explorers. We all work together because we all benefit. What about the Zalkari? Jake asked. Both aliens went quiet for a moment. Kralin's light patterns changed to colors that Jake had learned meant discomfort. The Zalkari are difficult, Thex said carefully. They believe that strength is the most important thing. They think that if you can take something, you deserve to have it. This causes problems with species who prefer peace. But they're still part of the council, Jake said. Yes, Kralin said, because they are strong and have many ships. Sometimes it is better to have dangerous people inside the group where you can watch them, rather than outside where they might cause more trouble. They arrived at the section of the station designed for humans. It looked almost like a hotel on Earth, with normal gravity and air that Jake could breathe without any equipment. But through the windows, he could see the alien sections of the station, each one strange and wonderful in its own way. You will stay here until the council meeting tomorrow, Dex said. Tonight there will be a dinner where you can meet some of the other council members informally. It might help them see that humans are not monsters. After the aliens left, Jake sat in his room and looked out at the stars. Tomorrow he would stand before the most powerful beings in the galaxy and try to convince them that humans deserved to be here. He thought about all the human colonies spread across dozens of star systems, all the families who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars. No pressure, he said to himself, and tried to smile. But deep down, he knew that everything humans had built in space could be lost if he failed tomorrow. The thought scared him more than any battle he had ever fought. Jake woke up early on the morning of the council meeting. He had barely slept, thinking about what he would say to defend humanity. He put on his best military uniform and looked at himself in the mirror. The man looking back at him seemed too ordinary to speak for an entire species. At breakfast, Ambassador Thex came to see him. Her purple gas swirled more slowly than usual, which Jake had learned meant she was calm. "Are you ready, Commander?" she asked. "As ready as I can be," Jake said. "Can you tell me what to expect?" Vex's form shifted inside her suit. The council chamber is very large. Each species has their own section with the right environment for their bodies. You will stand in the center, where everyone can see and hear you. She paused, and her gas moved faster. "Commander, I must warn you. A Zalkari." have been talking to other council members for days. They are trying to convince everyone that humans are dangerous. Some species are starting to believe them. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Which species? The aquatic builders are worried because they think humans want to take over water worlds. The Kithra are concerned because human ships keep entering their territory by mistake. Even some of the neutral species are asking questions about human intentions. This was worse than Jake had expected. He had thought the main problem was just with the Zelkari. Now it seemed like several alien species were worried about humans. What should I do? Jake asked. Tell the truth, Vex said simply. But make sure they understand that humans want to be part of the galactic community, not take it over. An hour later, Jake walked into the council chamber. The sight took his breath away. The room was enormous, bigger than any building he had ever seen. The ceiling was so high he could barely see it, and it was covered with stars that looked real, but were probably just lights. Around the edges of the chamber were 12 different sections, each one designed for a different alien species. The Titan section had extra strong floors and very high ceilings. The Delphin section was filled with water and connected to the main chamber by tubes. The Etherian section sparkled with crystal formations that caught and reflected light dot in the center of the chamber was a small platform where Jake would have to stand. It seemed very small and lonely, surrounded by all those alien beings watching him. Jake walked to the platform and looked around. There were hundreds of aliens in the chamber, all different shapes and sizes and colors. Some looked almost like humans, but with different skin or extra arms. Others were so strange that Jake couldn't even figure out which end was their head. A deep voice rumbled through the chamber like thunder. Jake looked up and saw High Counselor Vex Thuman, one of the Titans. He was as big as a house, with gray skin that looked like stone and eyes that glowed with inner light. Commander Jake Martinez of the human species, Thuman said, his voice so deep that Jake felt it in his bones. You stand before this council to answer serious charges. The Zelkari Collective claims that your species has committed acts of aggression against them and violated galactic law. Jake looked toward the Zelkari section of the chamber. What he saw there made him understand why other species found them frightening. There were about 20 Zelkari in the section, all of them standing in perfect military formation. They looked like giant insects made of armor, with sharp claws and mandibles that could probably cut through metal. Their shells had patterns of light that moved across them like angry lightning. The leader of the Zelkari delegation stepped forward. This was Warsinger Klix Venesh, the one who had made the formal complaint against humanity. He was bigger than the other Zelkari, and his shell was covered with scars that showed he had been in many battles. Honored counselors, Venesh said, his voice making clicking sounds that were translated into words Jake could understand. The humans are a plague that spreads across the galaxy without respect for those who came before them. They build their colonies in our ancient hunting grounds and attack our ships when we try to investigate. Venesh pointed one of his sharp claws at Jake. This human stands here pretending to be peaceful, but his species thinks only of expansion and conquest. They are no different from the Devourers, who tried to consume the galaxy 300 years ago. A murmur went through the chamber. Jake had read about the Devourers in his studies. They were an ancient species that had tried to take over the entire galaxy before the council was formed. Comparing humans to them was a very serious insult. Warsinger Venesh, Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sound. System. You compare humans to the Devourers, but the facts don't support that claim. The systems where we built our colonies were empty. We found no settlements, no infrastructure, no permanent presence of any kind. Venash's shell flashed with angry patterns. Those systems have been Zelkari hunting grounds for over 200 years. Our ancestors hunted there when your species was still crawling in caves on your little planet. Hunting grounds are not colonies, Jake replied, staying calm even though he felt angry. Under galactic law, a species cannot claim territory they do not occupy or develop. You may have hunted in those systems, but you never built anything there or lived there permanently. Jake turned to address the full council. Honored members, humanity followed all proper procedures when we established those colonies. We sent exploration ships to survey the systems. We found worlds with plants and animals, but no intelligent life. We broadcast our intentions to all nearby species and received no objections. Only after our colonies were established and our people were living there did the Zelkari claim those systems belonged to them. High Counselor Thuman raised one massive hand. War Singer Venesh, do you have evidence of permanent Zelkari presence in the disputed systems? Venesh's mandibles clicked rapidly. We have patrol records showing Zelkari ships in those systems. For many years. Patrol records are not the same as territorial occupation, Jake said. My own species has patrol ships that visit many systems, but that doesn't mean we claim to own all of them. A new voice spoke from the Etherian section. Counselor Krallen's crystal body was flashing with patterns that Jake had learned meant deep thought. Commander Martinez, Krallen said, his voice like music, the Zelkari also claim that human ships attacked their vessels without provocation. How do you respond to this charge? Jake had been expecting this question. Counselor Krallen, I was present during those encounters. I can provide the Council with complete tactical recordings of what happened. That will not be necessary, Venesh interrupted. Everyone knows humans are violent. You attacked our ships when you should have simply left when ordered to do so. War Singer Venesh, Jake said, his voice getting stronger. Your ships attacked civilian cargo vessels carrying supplies to families living in those colonies. Women and children depend on those supply runs. When cargo ship captains refused to allow your warriors to board their ships, your people opened fire on unarmed civilians. The chamber went very quiet. Jake could feel the attention of hundreds of alien minds focused on him. My patrol ships were nearby when we received distress calls from the cargo vessels, Jake continued. We responded to protect innocent people. Our targeting was precise. We disabled your ship's weapons and engines, but made sure not to hurt anyone. No Zelkari died in those encounters, even though you were firing on civilian ships. Venesh's shell patterns were flashing so rapidly they looked like strobe lights. The human lies. We were investigating illegal settlements in our territory. By attacking supply ships carrying food and medicine to families? Jake asked. By trying to board civilian vessels by force? War Singer Venesh, what you describe sounds more like piracy than law enforcement. A stirring went through the chamber. Several alien species began making sounds that their translation devices turned into concerned whispers. Jake realized that Venesh might have just admitted to something that would hurt his case. But Jake also knew this was his chance to show the Council what humanity really stood for. He took a deep breath and prepared to make the most important speech of his life. Jake looked around the council chamber. Hundreds of alien eyes were watching him, waiting to see what he would say next. This was the moment that would decide humanity's future among the stars. Honored counselors, Jake began, his voice steady and clear. War Singer Venesh speaks of strength and territory, but I want to tell you what humanity really stands for. He turned slowly, making sure to look at each section of the chamber. 3 months ago, a Kithira refugee ship was attacked by pirates near our colony on Kepler 7. The ship was badly damaged and had over 200 families on board, including many children. Our people could have ignored the distress call. After all, the Kithira were not our responsibility. Jake paused, letting his words sink in. But that's not what humans do. Our colonists worked for 3 days straight to repair that ship. They shared their food and medical supplies with the refugees. They even gave up some of their own quarters, so Kithura families would have safe places to sleep. From the Kithura section came a series of clicking sounds. Jake had learned this was how they showed approval. One of the spider-like Kithura stood up on her many legs. "The human speaks truth," she said in her musical voice. "I am Counselor Web Weaver Silkus. My own cousin was on that refugee ship. The humans saved many lives that day and asked for nothing in return." War Singer Vanash's shell patterns flashed with anger. One act of kindness does not erase aggressive expansion. "You're right," Jake said, surprising everyone. "One act doesn't prove anything, so let me tell you about more acts." Jake had memorized dozens of examples during his journey to Nexus Prime. 2 years ago, when the stellar plague hit the Titan colonies, human medical ships were the first to respond. We shared our research and helped develop the cure that saved millions of Titan lives. High Counselor Thuman's deep voice rumbled through the chamber. "This is also true. Human doctors worked alongside our scientists without asking for payment or territory in return. Last year," Jake continued, "when the Etherian crystal farms were damaged by solar storms, human engineers volunteered to help rebuild them. We learned your technology and improved it, then shared those improvements freely." Counselor Crowland's crystal body brightened with patterns that showed gratitude. "The humans increased our crystal production by 30%. They could have kept that knowledge for themselves, but chose to share it." Jake could see that some of the council members were starting to listen more carefully. But he also noticed that several alien species still looked worried or uncertain. "War Singer Vanash," Jake said, turning back to the Zelkari leader. "You say humans are aggressive and only think about expansion. But if that were true, why would we help other species? Why would we share our technology? Why would we risk our own ships to save alien refugees?" Vanash's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Because you want to make other species weak and dependent on you. It is a trick to make conquest easier." "That's an interesting theory," Jake said calmly, "but it doesn't match the facts. Let me show the Council what really happened in our encounters with Zelkari ships." Jake activated the holographic display system in the center of the chamber. 3-dimensional images appeared in the air, showing the space around the human colonies during the attacks. "This is the cargo ship Peaceful Trader 3 months ago," Jake said as the images moved. "It was carrying medical supplies and food to families on New Terra. Watch what happens when the Zelkari ships approach." The hologram showed 3 human cargo ships moving slowly through space. Suddenly, 5 Zelkari warships appeared and surrounded them. The Zelkari ships were much bigger and had many more weapons. "The Zelkari ships demanded that our cargo vessels stop and prepare to be boarded," Jake narrated. "Our captains tried to explain that they were carrying civilian supplies, not military equipment. They offered to transmit their cargo manifests to prove they weren't carrying anything dangerous." In the hologram, the human ships sent data transmissions to the Zelkari vessels. For several minutes, nothing happened. "The Zelkari ships ignored our peaceful communications," Jake said. "Instead, they moved closer and began charging their weapons." At this point, our cargo ship captains had 2 choices: allow armed warriors to board ships carrying families and children, or try to escape. The hologram showed the human ships starting to move away from the Zelkari vessels. Immediately, the Zelkari ships opened fire. "As you can see," Jake said, "the Zelkari fired first. They were shooting at civilian ships that posed no threat to them." Warsinger Vanash stood up, his shell flashing with angry patterns. "Those ships were in Zelkari territory. We had every right to inspect them." "Did you?" Jake asked. "Let me show the Council something else." The hologram changed to show a star map of the region. Jake pointed to the systems where the attacks had happened. These are the systems where the encounters took place, Jake said. Now, let me show you where the nearest Zelkari colonies are located. Red dots appeared on the map, showing Zelkari settlements. They were all very far away from where the attacks had happened. The closest Zelkari colony is over 50 light years away from where your ships attacked our vessels, Jake said to Venesh. Under galactic law, a species cannot claim territory more than 20 light years from their nearest permanent settlement. Murmurs went through the chamber as council members checked their own records. Jake could see some of them looking surprised or concerned. War Singer Venesh, said a new voice from the aquatic builder section. The speaker was Counselor Deep Current Flowing, one of the water-breathing dolphins. Is it true that your nearest colony is so far from the disputed systems? Venash's shell patterns flickered with what Jake had learned was the Zelkari equivalent of embarrassment. Distance is not important. Those systems have been Zelkari hunting grounds for generations. But hunting grounds are not colonies, said another voice. This came from Ambassador Thex in the Vortex section. Her purple gas was swirling rapidly inside her suit. Commander Martinez is correct about galactic law. Temporary use does not create permanent territorial claims. Jake pressed his advantage. Honored counselors, I want to show you one more thing. This is what happened when my patrol ships arrived to help the cargo vessels. The hologram showed Jake's 3 patrol ships arriving at the scene. They were smaller than the Zelkari warships, but moved faster. My orders were to protect the civilian ships, Jake said. But I also had orders to avoid unnecessary casualties. Watch how we engage the Zelkari vessels. In the hologram, the human. Ships fired precisely at the Zelkari ships' weapons and engines. They didn't try to destroy the enemy vessels or kill their crews. We disabled their weapons so they couldn't continue firing on civilian ships, Jake explained. We damaged their engines so they couldn't chase our cargo vessels. But we were very careful not to hit their life support systems or crew quarters. The hologram showed the Zelkari ships drifting in space, damaged but still intact. After a few minutes, they began moving away. All Zelkari crew members survived those encounters, Jake said. We could have destroyed their ships completely, but we chose not to. Does that sound like the behavior of an aggressive species that only thinks about conquest? High Counselor Thuman leaned forward in his massive chair. War Singer Venash, is it true that no Zelkari died in these encounters? Venash's shell patterns were now flickering in patterns that Jake recognized as extreme anger mixed with embarrassment. The humans were lucky. Next time, the outcome will be different. Next time, Jake said, his voice sharp. War Singer Venash, are you threatening to attack more human civilian ships? The chamber went completely silent. Every alien in the room was staring at Venash, waiting for his answer. Venash realized he had made a terrible mistake. His shell patterns changed to colors that meant he was trying to think of a way out of the situation he had created. The Zelkari will defend our territory, he said weakly. Territory you've admitted you don't actually control, Jake said. Territory that's 50 light years from your nearest colony. Territory where you've never built settlements or infrastructure. Jake turned back to the full council. Honored members, the evidence is clear. Humanity has followed galactic law. We've established colonies in empty systems. We've helped other species in times of need. When attacked, we've defended ourselves with minimum necessary force. We've tried to be good neighbors and productive members of the galactic community. He looked directly at War Singer Venesh. The Zelkari, on the other hand, have attacked civilian ships in systems they don't control, threatened more attacks, and admitted that they believe strength gives them the right to take whatever they want from others. The silence in the chamber stretched on for long minutes. Jake could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. Everything humans had built among the stars hung on what the council would decide next. The council chamber stayed silent for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Jake could hear his own heartbeat as he waited for someone to speak. Finally, High Counselor Thuman's deep voice filled the chamber. "The council will now deliberate," the massive titan announced. "Commander Martinez, you will be informed of our decision when we have reached one. The session is adjourned." Jake walked out of the chamber, feeling exhausted. He had said everything he could think of to defend humanity. Now all he could do was wait and hope it had been enough. Ambassador Vex was waiting for him outside the chamber. Her purple gas was moving very slowly inside her suit, which Jake had learned meant she was thinking deeply about something. "How do you think it went?" Jake asked her. "Better than I expected," she said. "You presented your case very well. But the council moves slowly. It may take days for them to reach a decision." Jake spent the next 3 days in his quarters, trying not to think about what would happen if the council decided against humanity. He read books, exercised, and tried to sleep, but his mind kept going back to the meeting. On the second day, something unexpected happened. Counselor Krallen came to visit him. The crystal Etherian's body was flashing with patterns that showed excitement. "Commander Martinez," Krallen said, "I have a proposal to discuss with you." "What kind of proposal?" Jake asked. "My people have been studying human technology, particularly your crystal growing techniques. We would like to establish a joint research station where Etherian and human scientists could work together." Jake was surprised. "You want to work with us even before the council makes its decision?" Krallen's crystal body brightened. "Commander, after hearing your presentation, many council members are seeing humanity in a new light. Your species has much to offer the galaxy." The next day, even more aliens came to see Jake. Counselor Deep Current flowing from the Delphins wanted to discuss human water purification technology. A representative from the Kithra asked about establishing trade agreements. Even one of the smaller Titan counselors came to talk about human construction techniques. "This is very unusual," Ambassador Vex told Jake. "Normally, species wait for the council's official decision before making any agreements with each other." On the morning of the 4th day, Jake was called back to the council chamber. The massive room looked the same as before, but Jake could sense that something had changed. The alien representatives seemed more relaxed, and even the Zelkari section was quieter than before. High Counselor Thuman stood up in his section, his huge form casting shadows across the chamber floor. "Commander Jake Martinez," Thuman's voice rumbled through the room. "The council has reached its decision regarding the charges brought by the Zelkari Collective against humanity." Jake felt his stomach clench. This was the moment that would determine humanity's future among the stars. After careful review of all evidence presented, Thuman continued, "This council finds that humanity acted within established galactic law when establishing colonies in the disputed systems. The evidence clearly shows that these systems contained no permanent settlements or infrastructure from any council species." Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him, but Thuman wasn't finished. "Furthermore," the Titan continued, "the evidence shows that Zelkari vessels initiated hostile actions against civilian human ships. Under council law, this constitutes an act of piracy, regardless of any territorial claims." Warsinger Venash stood up in the Zelkari section, his shell flashing with angry patterns. "This council favors the newcomers over those who have served it faithfully for centuries." "Warsinger Venash," Thuman said, his voice carrying a warning tone, "you will remain silent until given permission to speak." Venash's shell patterns showed barely controlled rage, but he sat back down without saying another word. Thuman turned his attention back to Jake. "However, this council also recognizes that humanity's rapid expansion has created legitimate concerns among some member species. Many fear that humans will continue to expand aggressively without regard for established territories or peaceful relations. Jake's relief started to fade. This sounded like it might be leading to restrictions on human expansion. Therefore, Thuman said, this council proposes a new framework for human integration into galactic society. The holographic display in the center of the chamber came to life, showing a complex diagram that Jake didn't immediately understand. Humanity will be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, Thuman announced. Jake's knees almost gave out. Full membership? He had hoped that humanity would just be allowed to keep their existing colonies. This was far more than he had dared to dream. As the 13th member species of this council, Thuman continued, humanity will have voting rights on all matters of galactic importance. You will have representation in all council committees and will be eligible to host council facilities and research stations. The chamber filled with various sounds as different alien species expressed approval in their own ways. The Delphins made musical humming sounds. The Etherians flashed with bright, happy colors. Even some of the smaller species that Jake didn't recognize seemed pleased. However, Thuman said, and Jake prepared himself for the conditions that would come with membership. This membership comes with certain responsibilities and agreements. The holographic display changed to show star maps and trade routes. First, all future human expansion must be coordinated through the Council. New colonies must be approved by a majority vote of member species. This will ensure that expansion does not conflict with existing territorial claims or endanger established trade routes. Jake nodded. This seemed reasonable and would actually help prevent future conflicts. Second, humanity will contribute to the Council's collective defense forces. Human military technology and expertise will be shared with other member species for the protection of all Council territories. Again, Jake thought this made sense. If humanity was going to benefit from galactic protection, they should contribute to it as well. Third, humanity will establish cultural and scientific exchange programs with all member species. This will help other species understand human intentions and allow humanity to learn from the wisdom of older galactic civilizations. Jake smiled at this condition. It was exactly the kind of thing that would help prevent future misunderstandings like the one with the Zalkari. The vote on human membership will now be taken, Thuman announced. All those in favor of accepting humanity as the 13th member of the Galactic Council indicate your approval. Jake watched as sections of the chamber lit up with different colors and sounds indicating approval. The Titans rumbled their agreement. The Etherians flashed bright patterns. The Delphins sang harmonious notes. One by one, 11 different alien species voted to accept humanity into their ancient alliance. Only the Zalkari section remained dark and silent. The vote is 11 in favor, 0 opposed, with 1 abstention, Thuman announced. Humanity is hereby accepted as the 13th member of the Galactic Council. The chamber erupted in celebration. Jake stood on the central platform, overwhelmed by the sounds and lights of a dozen alien species welcoming humanity into their community. After the celebration died down, Jake found himself surrounded by alien representatives wanting to discuss everything from trade agreements to joint exploration missions. The future that had seemed so uncertain just days ago now looked bright with possibilities. Later that evening, Jake sat in his quarters, preparing his report for Admiral Kane. He still couldn't quite believe what had happened. Humanity had not only avoided punishment, but had been welcomed as a full member of the galactic community. As he wrote his report, Jake thought about the colonies scattered across human space, all the families who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars. They would no longer have to worry about being forced to abandon their homes. They were now part of something bigger than just humanity. They were part of a galactic civilization that had existed for centuries. The stars outside. His window no longer seemed cold and distant. They were home to friends and allies who had chosen to trust humanity despite their fears and concerns. Jake finished his report and sent it to Earth. Admiral Kane would be surprised to learn that sending one soldier to face the galaxy's judgment had resulted in humanity gaining a seat at the table where the future of the galaxy was decided. Warsinger, Vanash, and the Zelkari would likely remain hostile, but they would find themselves increasingly isolated as other species began to see the benefits of cooperation with humanity. The age of human expansion through conflict was over. The age of human growth through partnership had begun. Outside Jake's window, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, welcoming humanity home.